Hi everyone. Today we're going to be talking about peer recommendations in the business school application process. We are joined by JoAnne Goldberg, who was the former Assistant Director of Admissions at the Stanford Graduate School of Business. She is also an admissions expert for InGenius Prep. Hello, JoAnne.
Hello, thank you.
So let's get started. My first question for you is, what is a peer recommendation and how does it differ from an employer or teacher recommendation, especially in cases where students are a few years out from school and have more peer-like relationships than authority figures?
Everybody who's applying to business school and the people who are writing the letters of recommendation need to keep in mind that the admissions committee is trying to get to know you as well as possible. So the peer recommendation gives the admissions committee a different perspective on you as an applicant, seeing you not from kind of the top down, which your supervisor is going to write a recommendation about you as an employee, but as someone who is your peer or perhaps even your subordinate. It's actually a really, really difficult recommendation to write. So I would recommend that anybody using a peer recommendation choose your recommender pretty carefully.
Okay, and what are schools looking for in a peer recommendation?
Well, again, they're looking for a different perspective, a different way to look at the applicant, get to know the applicant from the perspective of somebody who has actually worked with them. As an analog, these are the people who are going to be in class with you when you go to business school. So the admissions committee wants to understand what's it like to be sitting next to this person and working with this person, because that's going to be the experience of your classmates.
Okay, and are they looking for more information about the character of an applicant or the abilities of an applicant?
I think it's a little bit of both. Mostly they're looking for, pretty much everybody applying to the business school is going to be smart and hardworking and have really high ambitions. So they already know that. They're looking for stories that illustrate how you've demonstrated leadership, which perhaps your supervisor might not be as adept as providing, because your supervisor is your supervisor. Looking at examples of your leadership, of your taking initiative, of your thinking outside the box, of what it's like to work alongside you, because those are important qualities that the schools are looking for in candidates. They want to know whether you have good, as they would say, interpersonals.
Okay, great. And what kind of friend or colleague would be a good candidate to write a peer recommendation?
Okay, that's a really good question, because where I see these peer recommendations get torpedoed the most is the applicant looks at it and says, this is like, this is like the free space and bingo. I can just put that dot, I'm done. This is great. I'm going to ask my cousin to write the recommendation, or my roommate, or my boyfriend. We're still on good terms. And it's a really terrible recommendation. You don't want somebody who is that close to you, because they're going to see, it's like anyone else, when you get too close you see the flaws, and they may end up focusing on that, and that's not a good idea. They just know you too well. You want somebody with whom you've had a respectful but not quite as close relationship. If you are on some kind of athletic team, maybe you're a captain of the team, somebody who's on that team who's worked with you, that's a great person to write a recommendation. If you're involved in some community organization, or if you're in school, some kind of extracurricular organization, somebody that you've worked with there, let's say you were president of a club in college, or you're president of a community organization now, somebody that you work with there would be a great person to who could write articulately about your leadership skills and about your ability to organize people and take charge. So those are good people, and that I would pretty much stick to people. You can ask your colleagues as well, your actual work colleagues, but they should be people with whom you have actually worked side by side on a project, not just people who are in the next cubicle who have not worked directly with you, because they will not be able to talk about the actual skills that you bring to any work endeavor. Another purpose that your work colleagues can serve, if you have, because most schools require recommend that you have your supervisor write a recommendation, and we all know that sometimes bosses are not the best. They may not absolutely love you as much as they should, or they may just be really, really difficult taskmasters. If you've got a work colleague who can say, oh, our boss is really, really tough, and You may see in his recommendation that he's a little bit hesitant, but that's who he is, and he actually loves my colleague more than anyone else, and his standards are super, super high, and even so, she meets them better than anyone else. So explain a little bit of why the supervisor's recommendation might not seem completely glowing because this guy's kind of a jerk and doesn't write glowing recommendations. So your work probably can help in that regard too.
Okay, great. So I'd imagine that a lot of people who stumble upon this video will be people who have been asked by applicants to actually write the peer recommendations. What advice would you give to people who are writing these recommendations?
I would think in terms of actual anecdotes and experiences, examples that you can think of where the person that you're writing the recommendation for really stood out to you as somebody who had a lot of character. Again, the whole leadership thing, somebody who really stood up, stepped out, went beyond what was expected, and really demonstrated exceptional levels of skills and leadership. So instead of saying so-and-so is really a hard worker and really smart and does this and does that, give examples of experiences that you had where that person demonstrated those qualities, and let the admissions people draw the conclusions themselves. Instead of throwing a bunch of adjectives at them, give them the story that illustrates those adjectives.
Okay, great. My last question today is, what is the best peer recommendation you've ever read?
You know, I was trying to think about that. There's so many. As I said, it's a really, really tough recommendation to write, and there tend to be worse ones rather than better ones. So as with any recommendation, I'd always suggest that you sit down with a person and probably even before you ask them to write them a recommendation, tell them that you're applying to business school and see what kind of feedback you get. And if your peers say, oh, that's wonderful, you'd be a great MBA, I've been thinking that that would be a terrific program for you. I can just imagine you doing this, and that. You're like, yay, this is the person that can write this recommendation for me, and I know it's going to be a great recommendation because my colleague is on board with my applying to the program. Probably the best one, the one that stands out for me, though, looking back at all the many, many ones that I've read, was one which was written by a college classmate of the applicant who talked about various obstacles that the applicant had faced, both academically and in the sports arena, where the applicant was a competitive athlete. Talked about, for example, wandering into the gym at 2 a.m. and seeing the applicant working really hard, getting ready for an athletic competition. And there were a lot of examples like that, of like, wow, this is somebody who puts his all into everything he tries to do. And the recommender was able to describe that so vividly and really, really give me a strong sense of who this person was. I felt that if he walked into the office and I would know him by his sweat. So you want somebody who can paint those kinds of vivid pictures.
All right, thank you so much. This has been so helpful.
All right.
Thank you for joining us. For more admissions tips, videos, and advice, subscribe to our YouTube channel, www.youtube.com/user/InGeniusPrep. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Bye.